Ladies and gentlemen, the sky is not falling.
Oh, God.
Clemson and South Carolina both get on track this week.
Let's be honest. The sky was still falling to the second half of yesterday's games. Let's be honest.
Let's talk a little bit about Clemson. We didn't get to talk about them our first episode or recap episode because they were playing on the following night. They took on Duke game one, and from the outset we knew that wasn't going to be a slouch of a game for them. I mean, Duke won 8 games last year.
I thought it was going to be a slouch because just for the sheer fact, Duke did win 8 games.
Right.
They didn't play the 2 toughest teams in the ACC last year.
Yeah, but Duke came out, and that quarterback, I mean, he was throwing it, he was running it. I mean, he was doing everything. And unfortunately for Clemson, they go out and hire the best OC in that nation and put up 7 points.
Yeah, and honestly, their 7 points was gifted to them by Duke fumbling the ball. And I don't know if it's a thing where it's like Dabo hired him, but it's like, is he running the offense he wants to, or is he running based off Dabo's vision for his offense?
Yeah, and I had questions about Garrett Riley coming into this game because he's never been by himself calling plays.
He's never been the guy.
Right, exactly. This is like the first time where it's his show. And like you said, is it really his show? Like, is it what he wants to do, or is it, how Dabo wants it to go? Because it looked like an offense that Clemson's always ran.
Their offense against Duke was the offense you've seen from them the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Was it really DJ's fault previous 2 seasons?
Klubnik, he was 27 to 43, 209 yards, a touchdown and an interception. He's going through some growing pains. Obviously, he's only started now, I think, 3 games as a starter.
Yeah.
So he's going to have those interceptions. Some of the passes, it just looked like he was just a tick off, against Duke. But overall, the fact that Clemson gave up almost 200 rushing yards against Duke was big for me because they've always talked about how good their defensive line is.
Yeah.
It's all world. They've always got the best defensive line.
Yeah.
And 200 yards. I mean, they didn't give up a passing touchdown.
But it's kind of like being a Gamecock fan. Like, you can have a good defense, but if your offense can't keep your defense off the field, you can only stop them so much. And the thing with Clemson, with the going back to the Duke game is, and it's kind of similar to the Tennessee Bowl game last year, where they're going to have the stats, but they can't capitalize once they get in. I mean, they got to
the red zone a lot.
They fumbled it, I believe, twice.
Yeah.
They had a blocked field goal. They just shot themselves in the foot when they had any sort of momentum going. Or it may have not even been a fumble, but it's like bad passes. And I think it's just unfair expectations because, Clemson was spoiled for almost a decade with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And, when when DJ committed to them, they dubbed him the next Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson. And same thing for Cade Klubnik. And it's just not always going to work out that way.
And it's unfair to put that on a kid coming in because it's already tough enough to play quarterback in college. It's already tough enough to, do it for a top 10 team. And then you get compared to those guys. I mean, you're almost set up for failure because if you make one mistake, it's just like, all right.
It's a short leash.
Exactly.
I mean, they were already calling for, and we'll talk about this more for Clemson's next game from yesterday, but people were already calling for them to replace Klubnik.
I saw somebody say, bring DJ back.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people around what I'm seeing on Twitter, people are like, I don't believe DJ was the problem. And I don't think DJ was the problem.
No. A lot of it was DJ wasn't great.
Yeah.
He wasn't, spectacular, Heisman, worthy, but he was good enough to get the job done.
Yeah.
It just seemed like the first 6 games of last year, DJ looked really good because they were tailoring the offense to what DJ could do.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, he's playing well, so let's start doing what we want to do now. And then he just can't do those things.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that's different for Clemson this year is normally they don't start with like a conference opponent. Right. It's usually just like most teams in America, their first 2 or 3 games are a tune-up game.
Right.
They're playing the Charleston Southerns or not even maybe Furman, but Florida Atlantic, something like that, where they know going in, okay, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But everybody predicted Clemson to beat Duke, but you still just never know coming into the season with a new full-time quarterback, even though he was there previous year,
go on the road
and a new offensive coordinator.
Right.
I mean, and honestly, I think they're still adjusting to a new defensive coordinator.
I think that they're adjusting to a lot of things because, obviously hats off to Duke and what they did. But then,
they look good.
Clemson goes on to, their game, yesterday against Charleston Southern. And like you said, that's what they're normally used to starting out as. That's what I wish South Carolina would have had.
Yeah.
It's let's have a tune-up game first.
Yeah.
But, you think that Clemson's just going to come right off the bat and take over Charleston Southern, and it was a touchdown game at halftime.
The first half was an exact mirror of how they looked against Duke.
Yeah.
Just Cade wasn't making smart decisions, fumbling.
Yeah, a pick six.
I mean, it wasn't. I mean, and I think we can say this without like facing any backlash as Gamecock fans. They didn't look good.
No, they didn't.
They did not look good at all, and that's not what you're used to seeing from Clemson. Like, yeah, their offense still struggled the past 2 seasons, but they still won.
Right.
And based off the first 6 quarters of Clemson's football season, they did not look good.
No.
And I think that's okay to say that without...
Definitely. I don't think any Clemson fan would disagree with us.
I hope not.
They didn't look good for the first 6 quarters, but something clicked at halftime because they did come out, and I think they scored 2 or 3 times in the first 5 minutes of the second half.
They put up the points in the third quarter.
Yeah, Klubnik, 28 of 37, 315 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he had a good game.
Yeah, the interception wasn't pretty, but he bounced back in a great way in the second half.
He definitely looked like what they want in the second half. The whole team looked like what they want to see in the second half.
But I think they still expect more because that's why they went with Klubnik.
Right.
That's why they wanted to go away from DJ, and through 2 games, and it's still very early. It can change a lot, but he's looked no different than DJ.
No, and they've got another game coming up week against Florida Atlantic to kind of fine tune those things because right after that they're taking on a top 5 team in Florida State. And, luckily for Clemson, it is in Death Valley. But, I mean, that's going to be a tough game because Florida State's looking good.
Florida State is the embodiment of what, and we can talk about this more later, but they're the embodiment of what the I guess you could say the great thing about the transfer portal is.
Right.
That I think at this point in time, Dabo's kind of hasn't embraced
away
it.
From it.
He hasn't embraced it, and you can see that on the field because – based off what we saw from Florida State last year and what we've seen so far this year, Clemson's not the top dog right now.
Right. And a lot of players were coming to Clemson because of what Clemson was at the time. But now you got kids, unfortunately, and nobody likes it, but they're making decisions based off money.
Yeah.
And then you do have these older programs like the Florida States, that maybe haven't been as good, but they still have that old school name. And now they've got the money that they can throw at them too. Those programs are going to start to make a comeback. And, like you said, Florida State's taking advantage of it. They have the money.
Yeah.
Their boosters have the money.
And I think another big thing is the portal, where it's like, when you commit to a program and you enroll, you can leave the next year. But guess what? If you want to go to a top program, you're sitting out for another year.
Right.
So you've lost, 2 years of eligibility right there. Now you're not as handcuffed to where you can and cannot go.
Yeah.
And it's a one-time deal, but it's like, you can make a decision that's best for you. You're not glued, you're not set in stone at this place for, 2 years.
Yeah.
And, and
the portal has definitely changed the game, and it's definitely helped some of these older schools.
I wouldn't say it's even the playing field, but like you're saying, not even the older schools, but it's like if you have the capability to have a strong NIL department, with the funds, you have a coach that embraces the portal. Yep. This is going to South Carolina, but I watched an interview or a podcast Shane Beamer did this year, and the guy that interviewed him asked him how he views the NIL with the high school players compared to the transfer portal players. Yeah. And he's like, it's a lot different because he was like, what you're getting in these transfer portal players. Yep. And he's like, it takes a little bit more to get them there. Right. You look at Rattler, what we had, I don't know what took him to get him here, but that's something Dabo has not yet to.
It's definitely more than just playtime and,
going to the AC championship game. And like you said, it's a business now. It's people may not like it, but the NCAA is just basically an NFL junior now.
It is. And in some ways it can kind of help the NCAA because if you don't think you're going to get drafted high, you can make just as much money playing college as you can, getting an undrafted rookie deal, or something like that. So, like in Rattler's case, he wasn't going to get drafted very high this past season. The way he's playing right now is looking like he is, trending towards a higher pick, but he probably made more money staying at South Carolina this year than he did making the jump to go to the NFL, maybe not getting drafted, ending up on a practice squad. It's still not chump change.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
he's definitely making more money than in college than he would be in the NFL this year.
And look at Will Shipley. Like, he's only a junior. He can technically leave this year, but I don't see him leaving because, one, the running back position in the NFL is just – it's not important.
Right.
And like I said, where he gets drafted is to be determined.
Yeah.
He's a great athlete, but he will stand to benefit financially from staying another year.
Yeah. The only downfall of it is kind of the risk of injury, but we could talk NIL forever.
It's a wild, wild west out there.
Yeah, it is.
But Clemson had a strong. They've had out of 8 quarters football, they've had two
strong ones.
And hopefully they can use that momentum to go into next.
If they
week's
come
game.
into Florida Atlantic and they're kind of doing the same thing against them like they did the first 6 quarters of their season, you're going to need to start to worry.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, that Florida State game is not going to be easy.
I think they'll know what team they have after Florida State. I wouldn't look too much into this past week.
Yeah.
And next week is when is there. I would say, honestly, probably it's so early in the season, but I think their college football playoff chances are probably slim right now.
I would say so. They're going to have to beat Florida State. They're going to have they're going to have
to look the way they did in the second half against Charleston Southern.
They're going to need to beat Florida State. They're going to need to beat Notre Dame.
Yeah.
They're going to need, and honestly, really and truly, even if you win those 2 games, losing to Duke could end up hurting you. But if they could have North Carolina or somebody like that be highly ranked at the end of the year for the ACC championship game, that'll obviously help. Obviously, they're not out of the playoffs, but they're unranked right now.
Exactly, and that's the first time they're unranked in, I think, 2021.
Yeah.
And I saw I wish I had saved it, but I saw a tweet on, or whatever it's called now, X. I don't know what you call them anymore. But Charleston Southern almost, I think they struggled to beat like a Division III opponent last week.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know. Obviously we don't follow Clemson like we do South Carolina, but I feel like Clemson was just kind of going through the motions a little bit. And that second half, I think they just said, screw it and let's play ball.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I think so. Well, like I said, if they can't come out and look like that against Florida Atlantic, I don't think that they will. But
no, I don't think so either.
My stomach's kind of hurting talking about Clemson so much. So let's move on to South Carolina, who they kind of righted the ship this week too.
Not at the beginning.
Obviously a tough opponent week 1 in North Carolina.
No slouch yesterday either.
No, Furman is top 5, or I think they were maybe
top
number
10
6.
in FCS.
Yeah, in FCS. So they're not a bad football team.
No. And let's not forget, they played Clemson pretty close last year. They actually outgained Clemson on offense last year.
Yeah, and Furman came out throwing punches. Ready to play, and South Carolina kind of looked the same way that we did against North Carolina, where it was like, all right, the line can't hold. Yeah. We can't do anything. Spencer's running for his life.
Yeah.
But, Rattler's playing his tail off despite what's going on with the line. I think the line, as the game progressed, started to look a little bit better.
Yeah, I think we
put a little bit more time.
I think we put. I don't know when these freshmen got put in, but we put in 2 freshmen, and they played really good.
Yeah, we got to figure something out line wise
because it ain't getting easier next week.
Rattler, another amazing game. Like I said, game 1 was really good for him. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he didn't have any mistakes.
9 sacks,
and then. He was 25 of 27 yesterday, 345 yards, 3 touchdowns. Xavier Legette is catching anything, within. It's almost like he's a magnet to the ball at this point.
He has got this is a credit to, I guess, the offseason workouts and everything, but he has gotten so big.
Yeah.
Like, he's grown a lot since he's been there.
He's definitely put in the time and the effort in the offseason to get better. And, with Juice kind of being...
Not 100%.
Not 100%.
Yeah, he's still not 100%. Even though he played yesterday.
Yeah.
You still didn't hear much from him.
And it's only going to help both of those guys out for Legette having the start that he has, because eventually they're just going to start focusing on him, which is going to open up Juice more. Amari and Brown had a good game as well.
Luckily, that injury is not as what we thought it was.
Yeah, anytime you see somebody not putting pressure down on a leg, I'm like, that's a knee.
When we were watching it last night, I was like, I was like, what's wrong? Like, what happened? Because there's nothing like, he didn't make like a sharp cut on the punt return when he got hurt. He just fell.
Yeah.
And luckily, it was just a hamstring. I don't know. And that could be false. I don't think Beamer would mislead people about the injury, because that's something that Muschamp was known for. But I don't think it would be. I don't see why he would lie about that.
Yeah, it's probably a hamstring. But these guys, they put so much strain on their body throughout these games.
Yeah.
You see these non-contact injuries happen all the time, and it's just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
It's just the body can only take so much.
Exactly. And another thing, like you were saying about Xavier Leggett having the game he did, I think the one good thing you can take out of when you play these smaller opponents is it gives players the opportunity to kind of get some reps in.
Right.
And this is kind of going back to Clemson's game against Duke, but I think one of their best players, I think linebacker, and I'm sorry I don't know his name, but he mentioned something, and I think it was on Monday or Tuesday, about not being in shape, game shape, let me rephrase it. And people took that as like, okay, what is going on inside Clemson's program?
You can't simulate
and that's like, game shape is, you got to get it. You
got to play games.
Working out in the off season does not correlate to what goes on in the field.
Right.
You don't. Once your body starts getting hit, you're hitting people. You're getting going, and I think they just misconstrued what he was trying to say about it.
It's just to get in game shape without playing games.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I was talking to someone. And, college is the only level of football that doesn't do a preseason.
Yeah. Whether it's
high school has, the
jamborees
where, okay, maybe you're only playing a half, but you're still playing, a preseason game to kind of acclimate to actually
playing,
doing what you're going to be doing every week. Mm-hmm. And the NFL has 3 or 4 weeks of preseason. And, maybe not every player plays during those preseasons, but for the most part they do.
Yeah.
And then in college, they're just like, all right, you've basically been playing each other, but you're not going 100%. You're just not, because you don't want to risk injury to yourself or your teammate.
It's a lot of non-contact. Yeah. At least majority of our injuries have been non-contact injuries.
And it's just the body getting used to being hit, and then it's just kind of gives. Yeah. On a play that's just like, all right, what happened there?
Yeah. But the first half for South Carolina was scary. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It was.
I was like, I can't. I had my Furman polo ready to wear today, just in case.
I think it was 27-14 at half. So not quite as scary as what Clemson had, but still,
it wasn't.
It was
like
a back and forth deal.
Yeah.
And then South Carolina comes out in the second half, looks a little bit better. A bright spot for me was seeing Lenore Sellers play.
Oh, the bright big that's agree. It's just a lot of our younger players getting to play.
Right. Yeah.
I think every quarterback we had on the roster played last night.
They did. Lenore's was 4-4.
He looked good.
2 touchdowns. Doty got some reps in.
Touchdown catch.
Yeah.
First touchdown catch of the year.
I like the way that they're using him. I know a lot of people are like, South Carolina's got 3 quarterbacks on the field at one time between Joyner and Doty and Rattler. But, if you look at Doty, he only played quarterback 1 year in high school. He played wide receiver.
Yeah.
So, he's done that before. And DeCarrion, he's just an athlete.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you're putting a Tom Brady out there running routes.
Yeah. He's an athlete.
Exactly.
And that's like what, Jordan said on the show last year about DeCarrion, like, you got to get him on the field.
Yeah, just
get him on the field
hands,
somehow.
Whatever it takes, and he's going to make things happen. He had 11 carries last night, 42 yards. I think we ended up with 100 rushing yards, but we're going to have to run the ball more.
The transfer we got from Newberry, and again, I know this is maybe like, I don't know the right word. It's like we're kind of, I don't know if you could say it's an overreaction, because we did play Furman,
right?
But the running back transfer we got from Newberry, he ran the ball pretty good. Like
Anderson,
you can definitely tell somebody who's a natural running back compared to DeCarrion.
They just see, and it's not really the physical thing. It's not the speed or anything.
It's a vision.
It's the vision. It's being able to see the whole, as it's opening up, or really to see the whole progressing to opening up. Sometimes, it's closed, but know
you got to make a read.
If I go ahead and make that cut, I know it's going to open up. And, and he, like you said, he's a true running back. It's something that takes time to learn how to run the ball and see the hole.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to have to use more of him for sure. And Juju, definitely more of Juju. Yeah. But again, you want to carry it on the field as well, because put the ball in his hands, get him in space, he's going to do spectacular things.
It's just like last year. Like, you need to get your best athletes. You need to find a way to get them on the field.
Yes.
And I'm not saying the transfer from Newberry, I think his last name's Anderson.
Yeah.
He may not be a 1,000-yard rusher. But, if especially in a situation we're in right now where our offensive line is struggling for confidence right now,
right,
maybe getting like a true running back in for a couple plays just to kind of get some rhythm going might
for
benefit
sure, because
us.
some of the run plays where we kind of get stuffed, it might not be the line. It might be that the hole was somewhere else, and the carry-on's just not seeing it. And like you said, you get a true running back in there who knows how to hit the hole and see those holes.
Yeah.
It'll definitely help the line out a lot.
And we had two players, the number 21 freshman from Pennsylvania, last name is Russell. He had a great game. He's the one who caught Lenore Seller's first touchdown pass. Then number 11, his name is Eddie Lewis. I think he's either from Memphis, Tennessee, or he transferred from Memphis.
He transferred from Memphis.
He had a great game yesterday.
6 catches, 89 yards. He caught one bomb too.
He went down after Amarian Brown. Or excuse me, he came in and showed out once Amarian Brown went down. Brown had a great game up until he got injured. And how about, we talked about this last week, Nicholas Harbor.
Yeah, finally gets in there, gets him a touchdown pass. Got to use him more. I understand that he's a freshman. Mm-hmm. He's still, acclimating to the game. He had some of those lingering injuries coming into the year. So I understand that they're trying to kind of be sparing.
Yeah.
Use these guys sparingly, at the beginning of the year so that we have them towards the end. But, hey, we got Georgia next week. We need as many of our playmakers on the field as possible.
We've got to utilize our tight ends more. Exactly, Trey Knox is just too dang good. How many catches did he have yesterday?
1 catch.
Yeah, like he's too good not to have 5 and 6 catches a game.
Yeah. And those guys, they're built big enough to help the line out as well. Yeah. So get them out there, throw some chip blocks or something like that just to help out.
Because Joshua Simon, he's another tight end, but he's another athletic tight end.
Yeah,
we've got a strong tight end room, and we've got to use it.
Yeah, for sure. It's only going to help the line out to have them out there. Just throwing that chip for, giving them an extra second and then running the route. I mean, that's a big deal for quarterbacks and for the line. Especially when you're going to have to play a team like Georgia. You're going to have to throw out everything that you got.
Yeah, and honestly, we're not going to face another team like Georgia.
No. Nobody will, because Georgia, to me, honestly, Georgia's still the number 1 team.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like athleticism, they're an NFL defense.
Yeah, and they lost half of that defense, and they're just like, all right, that's fine.
They've just replaced them. They've just replaced them 2 years in a row. Yeah, they lost. How many to the first round? Not this past season, but the season
6
before.
or 7.
And they just replaced. It's just Georgia is what Alabama used to be.
Exactly, and part of that is Georgia. They're getting their recruits, but they're also open to the portal. They're not, Kirby's not old school where he's like, nah, I'm not going to take these players.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys are coming from them just recruiting them.
Yeah.
But again, he's not shutting anything down like Saban and Dabo kind of have.
Yeah.
In terms of the portal. So Kirby's going to take whatever he can to keep winning.
Yeah. I'm nervous about next week, but the one good thing is Georgia's offense isn't what it was with Stetson Bennett as the quarterback. I don't think so.
No,
and their first 2 games they didn't play anybody. Yeah. Like it's still going to be. I don't think it's going to be a close game, but I have a little bit more confidence going into this season than I did last season against Georgia.
I think the offensive line is getting a little bit of confidence. And like I said, I think we needed a game like that.
And Beamer even said that last Monday or Sunday night, where it's like, go ahead and get your licks in, but be sure you give them credit once they get the ball rolling. And they kind of did a little bit, but it's again going back, played Furman, so we'll see once SEC play gets going how they perform.
Yeah, it's going to be, like I said, you're just going to have to. I don't like trick plays, but this is a game where you just got to use them in the right spot if you got them. But more, you got to be able to keep. You're not going to score every drive, but you can't have the 3 and outs and send your defense right back out there. You got to sustain some sort of drive and, at least give your punter a chance to flip the field position, something like that. That's the only way South Carolina's going to win this game. You got to score, obviously, but you got to extend drives, even on non-scoring drives.
Exactly.
You've got to be able to let
chew
your
up a couple
defense,
minutes.
take a break, take a breather. Rattler extending plays, not making, bad decisions at this point of the year like he was,
I think he was
last year.
I think one thing last year was just the offensive coordinator.
Right.
And that's not to take anything from the way Spencer played last year. But I think with Dow Loggins, the way he's called the games, some calls I don't agree with, but that's just all the calls aren't going to be a home run. No. They're not going to be the right play call. But Spencer, he's grown a lot since last season.
For sure. And, they said on the broadcast last night, a lot of people were kind of out on him as an NFL quarterback in the media.
Yeah.
But, like one of the guys said, he was like, the media might have been out on him, but NFL GMs are still calling every day saying how they like the way that he plays. And he's definitely setting himself up more. And the way that he's played the last 6 games, or 5 or 6 games,
dating back to Tennessee last year,
he's definitely set himself. He looks like the Rattler that everybody expected.
Yeah, that came from Oklahoma before he lost.
He's throwing for 300 plus yards, touchdowns. He's not making mistakes. He's throwing at a high completion percentage.
He's
definitely not hurting us.
No, and the thing is, it's going back to like what NFL scouts are people saying. It's insane when you look at go back to Deshaun Watson. Like, he wasn't a lock to be the first quarterback taken in the draft. It's quarterbacks who were not better than him, but they look at upside. Like Anthony Richardson getting taken where he did to the Colts this year. Why? Like, at the end of the day, I would rather see somebody's tape and what they do on the field other than, they're an athlete and they can throw the ball 105 yards. That doesn't always translate, and I feel like that was the thing with Spencer, and he wasn't making good decisions. But, at least through the first 2 games, he hasn't made many bad decisions.
I think that I don't think he's made any bad decisions. He hasn't thrown any interceptions. He had 2 incompletions last night. The first game, some of his incompletions were just a good decision to just get rid of the ball.
And I think that's, the one thing he's grown a lot this year is not feeling like he has to make a play every time he throws the ball, where it's like that can lead to some bad decisions. And that was a lot of his interceptions last year. It's just him trying to force it and just taking what the defense gives you and getting rid of the ball, or maybe even tucking and running. Yeah.
I think, and like you said, some of the calls are questionable for Loggins, but I think that what he's done is kind of put Spencer more in control. He feels more in control of this offense than he did last year. I think he understands it more. Yeah.
Again, going back, that was
so. Even though there's been some questionable calls here and there, I think that overall he's offensively, even with the offensive line problems, we've looked better this year than we did last year. We haven't made any key mistakes. It was just
just the blocking.
Some blocking. But that's going to come. And the other thing is playing offensive line, that's trusting the guy beside you is going to pick somebody up. Yeah. And these 5 guys, they haven't played any together as a unit. I mean, this is a whole brand new unit.
Yeah.
So it's going to take time. Like I said, they've progressively looked better.
Yeah, I agree.
They're going to have to make a big jump this week, though.
I'm not going to get to depending how it goes. Depending how it goes, I'm not going to just because you
can't overreact to if they get blown out by Georgia.
No, and it's easy to do that, but because we always play them the beginning of the season, but we still have not an easy schedule,
right?
But it's not favorable at the same time. But Georgia's just an anomaly. You can't. Depending how we play, we're probably still going to overreact, even though we're telling ourselves not to overreact.
Yeah. I think I'll probably overreact more if we get close to winning and not winning it.
That would be more of a concern about Georgia than South Carolina.
Right.
But I think it was a right step in the right direction for us this week. Again, this was a game we were supposed to win, kind of like Clemson. First half didn't really go our way, but you could tell in the second half both teams kind of took over and showed their true strengths in that they
again. Like I said at the beginning of the show, the sky's not falling yet.
I'd say at the end of this month, both us and Clemson will know what their teams are about.
For sure, yeah. I think that South Carolina loses to Georgia. For sure.
Yeah, I think so too.
I hope we can just look good. like I said, make some progress because there's still a lot of winnable games on our schedule.
Yeah.
Like you said, Georgia's just an anomaly. Not to say that we can't beat them. We've done it before.
Yeah.
Like I said, we shouldn't have beat Tennessee.
With DeCarry on at quarterback.
We shouldn't have beat Clemson and Tennessee last year, so everybody says. So,
Tennessee,
they just got to have a good week of practice.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, Tennessee didn't look that great against who they
Austin
play?
P.
Austin, PA.
Yeah.
And I think Clemson wins easily. I think they're going to pick up right where they left off in the second half. Because once you see that you can do it, I just don't understand why you don't continue to just look like that.
Yeah.
Like maybe, obviously, the numbers aren't always going to be the same depending who you're playing, but you know what each team is capable of. It's just, can they go out and do it?
Yeah. I think Clemson wins easily. They get looking like they want to look. I still don't think they got enough for Florida State right now. They're going to have to show a lot this week.
I guess it's just still an overreaction, but I think it's eating my own words from what I said in like the preview show. I don't think Clemson, based off what we've seen from them, they're not supreme. We're just like Alabama's not supreme anymore. And it's the day and age of college football where it's those two teams have coaches, and I wouldn't call them like ignorant to it, but I remember Dabo saying the day that college football players are paid, he's going to quit. Well, obviously that's not happened,
right?
But I think it's something where he still hasn't embraced it,
right?
And I think I even saw a tweet where DJ's dad like called out Dabo, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically, hold on, let me see if I can find it. I thought I had it. Give me a second. And I'll actually defend Dabo on this because I think what he said was not smart. Let me see.
Yeah, I mean, until Dabo, embraces the NIL and the portal and all that, they're only going to fall behind. It's tough to recruit whenever you're not doing what everybody else is doing. They're obviously all these teams are given an advantage now. Yeah. You're given that same advantage and you're not embracing it. That's on you at this point.
So DJ's dad tweeted, and this is and I don't have the original tweet that he was replying to, but he's like, I get it. You're against the portal and you dislike NIL, but that's you and how you feel. Your obligation is to the athletes and what best fits the success of the program. Listen, they gave DJ a ton of opportunities to be the guy for Clemson. Shane Beamer said this a ton of times. Like, the football team does not control. Like, Shane Beamer does not control what NIL deals his players get. Yeah. Like, that's not. He got NIL deals, but that's not on the coach to make sure your kid gets all these brand deals or whatnot. That's not for the football coach to do. That's the collective. That's the same time. But that's the collective that represents your university is what it's supposed to do. South Carolina finally passed the. I think it's called the Garnet Trust, where, they've hired like a sports marketing agency to kind of represent the athletics department to get their players these deals. That has nothing to do with the football coach. But, like you said, it's still on the football coach to, I'm not going to say put
if
pressure. If
there's a certain player that's looking for this stuff, that coach can definitely go to these organizations or whatever's running and say, hey, make this happen.
But that's for the transfer portal.
Right.
And Dabo has... granted, it's still kind of new, but as of today, Dabo hasn't really embraced the portal like in the NIL era. And, like we said at the beginning, it's these players can leave now. Like, they're not glued to your university anymore. But, obviously it could possibly change. I think he has to, or Clemson's just going to get left behind.
He's going to have to, or he's just going to be
another coach.
Watching the, vast majority of college schools that just aren't elite.
Yeah.
But
South Carolina loses this week. Clemson should win easily.
I agree. I think we got some tweets we're going to react to. You got that, Zeb?
Yep. You want that one?
Again, this goes back to
it's just people overreacting. Obviously, at first
he
says that Cade. He ain't it.
Yeah.
And then obviously in the second half he looked a little bit better, but I mean I don't disagree with his first tweet.
I don't either, but it's a knee jerk reaction where our emotion, we're human, our emotions get the best of us because at the end of the day, like I know he's a pretty big like Twitter guy
for Clemson.
But we're human. Like, we react very emotionally when it comes to sports. I especially do with South Carolina football.
Yeah.
Clearly, this person does for Clemson football. But it's still early. It's still early in the season. Like, you can't now. If it's like game 9 and Cade's still playing like that, then yeah, maybe not. I don't think he's the saving grace they said he was.
No, he's not. He's not he's not the Deshaun and he's not the Trevor Lawrence. But nobody is.
Yeah,
like,
and
they got extremely lucky that they had 2 quarterbacks. That they got one to start with.
Yeah.
But that they had 2 of them back to back.
Yeah.
They got extremely lucky, and they got so spoiled by that that Clemson fans just cannot grasp that every quarterback that Dabo brings in isn't some,
Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's not the next Michael Jordan, as he called, Deshaun at the time.
And it's not fair to the kids because it's like it's unreal. I wouldn't say unrealistic expectations. Like, yeah, you want to be confident in the players you're bringing in, but if you sit there and say, "Oh, he's got to be just exactly like Deshaun or Trevor Lawrence or heck even Taj Boyd," but it's just it puts a lot of pressure on. At the end of the day, they're still kids. I mean, he's what 19, 20?
The only person that they haven't put that pressure on was Kelly Bryant, and he actually did.
He did really exactly what DJ did.
Yeah.
He didn't lose them a game, but he's not going to go out. He wasn't going to go out and win you a game.
Right.
Whereas, like, if your defense is struggling and you're just in like an offensive shootout, that Kelly Bryant and DJ's not like that. And at what we've seen so far from Cade, dating back to last season, excluding the ACC championship game, he's not that. But he's still only a sophomore, and he's got a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
Or next man up. I mean, it's
on. It's not on the coaching staff and stuff. They're not the ones coming out and saying these things most of the time. It's normally the fans clamoring about how many 5 stars they got.
Just like what we're doing with Lenore Sellers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to be confident or excited about what you have.
Lenore's came out and he looked great, but we could throw him out there against Georgia and he could fall flat on his face. I mean,
the touchdown pass he threw to the Russell guy. Well, he wasn't even supposed to throw it that way.
Yeah.
It was apparently supposed to go to the other side of the field. Right. That was like his 3rd or 4th option. And it's good to get excited. Again, we're all humans. We're emotional when it comes to sports.
It's that time of the year where everybody makes these knee-jerk reactions. I mean, it is because you haven't seen these teams play for months at a time, and then you only see them now for 2 games, and they're not looking like what you expected.
And Clemson fans are used to and accustomed to being a top 5 team for the majority of the season. They're used to going to.
They're spoiled.
They're used to going to ACC championship games. They're used to going to the college football playoff, and they haven't looked like that in the past couple of seasons. And I think,
and then they lash out.
They're not used to what we're used to.
Right, exactly.
We're used to mediocrity.
We're used to this. When we lose, it doesn't hurt as bad.
We're used to being let down majority of the time when it comes to our football
I wish,
team.
But at the end of the day, I wish that I was kind of spoiled like they were. I would have loved to have gone through that and then be reacting like they are now.
Isn't it bad that we're like, just don't get blown out next week?
Exactly.
Just don't get blown out next weekend.
This was about the Duke game, not a blowout the way people expected. But that was the first time that Duke's beat a top 10 team since '89.
And guess who the head coach was? Dabo's nemesis.
Yeah, I mean, Duke's coach, he's not a big name, but he's embraced the things that he needs to embrace. Won 8 games last year. Now he's already got a ranked team this year, 2-0.
Yeah. Because it's not like Duke was it's not a hostile environment or anything.
No,
Clemson just didn't play good.
They didn't. And that's kind of, it is what it is. And you're going to have that. You can't just have a decade of success and not have a game like that. It's just, you're going to have a game when no matter what you try, it just don't work.
Yeah. And this one, it's kind of what we've said about, it's paraphrasing, but basically say the day of Nick Saban just going out and recruiting, hey, come to Alabama. Yeah. It's over. Like, it's the same thing with any major college football program. Just pitching your name in these kids' living rooms with their parent, that day's over. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I think that Nick Saban will adjust to it quicker than Dabo. And I say that because of the new thing that he's doing now, where he's going to go on Pat McAfee's show every Thursday. That's something that you didn't used to see Nick Saban do. He didn't want to have nothing to do with the media. And now he's like taking time out to do something new. So I could see him being like, all right, obviously now after they lost to Texas, like we got to change something. What we're doing ain't working.
Yeah.
I ain't going out like this.
And honestly, I think Saban's style of coaching is not as attractive as it used to be.
No.
Especially not when, like I said, with the NIL era where teams can players can just leave.
Yeah.
Like they don't even have to wait until the end of the season. Like there's a DB from Florida.
Yeah.
They entered the transfer portal last week, and like in his tweet, like thanking everybody, he didn't even mention Florida's current coach, Billy Napier. And he probably didn't get recruited by Napier. So you feel like he doesn't owe him anything. Exactly. But there's no like loyalty to a school anymore. Yeah. Like players aren't going to a Clemson or an Alabama for the coaches anymore. They're going for what business deals can I get, NIL. It's a business. It's NFL junior right now.
It is, but that's why it kind of speaks highly of the players that do stick around. Mm-hmm. You look at a Luke Doty who could probably have transferred and gone to maybe not another SEC school, but somewhere else, got more playing time,
like a smaller school.
But he's stuck by South Carolina, and I mean that's respectable.
And there's players like that on every team.
Yeah,
like we've got a couple with Luke, and obviously we're gonna know more because we follow Carolina more. But you've got Xavier Leggett's another one.
Yeah.
Luke Doty, DeCarrion. You just don't see that a lot anymore. Where I think that's a benefit of being from the state where you're playing at, and have like even if you didn't grow up being a Gamecock fan, you have a little bit of emotional connection with the state and wanting to stay there. And it always shows. Xavier's doing himself a lot of favors this season.
For sure.
Sometimes
it's good to not just go and to the next,
because it doesn't always
you just get washed out, and having 4 or 5 receivers, you're not getting as many targets as he is now.
There's a quarterback. His name was Tate Martell. He's from like Nevada, Las Vegas. Committed to Ohio State. Arrived at Ohio State. Wasn't named the starter. He transferred to Miami. Wasn't named the starter. Then he transferred to another program. Wasn't named the starter. And it's like the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's like sometimes like there's nothing wrong with waiting your turn,
sticking it out, working,
and being a better player, because it's like I feel like it teaches. That's the one downside to the portal. It's like it's okay to leave when you hit a rough patch or you don't get exactly your way. But sometimes people use it for the benefit, like going from a smaller school to a bigger school.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you can go from a smaller school to a bigger school, or if it's a situation where you came to a school for a coach and a style of play, and then maybe they move on from that coach and they bring in a completely different style. It's just not going to benefit. But the guys that are just like, all right, you're not playing me, I'm gone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not really benefiting anyone, because you hardly ever see someone just say like, all right, you're not giving me what I want here, I'm going somewhere else, and then them thriving, elsewhere.
And it's I feel like sometimes, looking at Jaheim Bell from last year, I think he knew he was leaving. And he was already being courted halfway through the season, which is not a big deal.
For him, it sucks, but at the same time, they weren't using him like he probably should have been used. Our offensive coordinator stunk. So
I think if we'd have had Loggins last year, I think Jaheim Bell probably would have stayed.
Probably so.
But also I feel like we upgraded.
Yeah.
In the tight end room as a whole. So.
Texas A&M still not happy with Jimbo Fisher. I'm surprised that he's not fired yet.
He was already he always won a national championship at Florida State. But before he left for A&M, he still wasn't doing that good at Florida State.
Right.
And they are the people that should be. This is the team that should be benefiting the most from the NIL era, because they consistently get top recruiting.
They're paying out money. They have that Texas oil money. These boosters pay, and that's why I'm surprised. I know his buyout is extreme, but that's why I'm surprised. These old oil guys aren't just like, write the check, get him out, because they are constantly failing.
Yeah.
They haven't had a good season under him, and they're constantly putting them up there at the top of the rankings. They're getting these 5 stars, and then they're losing.
Yeah, and they're not playing good. You can get all the athletes in the world, but if you can't coach them and develop them, what are you doing? And I think you've seen enough to know what kind of program A&M is going to have under Jimbo Fisher.
Right, like you said, you got this blind loyalty to a guy who is clearly a bust.
Yeah. With the amount of money you're paying, if you're paying somebody this amount of money that Jimbo's getting paid, that's on, they have to produce.
Right.
You got paid that money for a specific reason, and if you're not producing, it stinks, but it's like you got to find somebody else.
Yeah,
like I wouldn't want to be paying all that money for that.
Yeah, eventually, like I said, I know that buyout is extreme, but
Good on the coach's agent for getting that.
Sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and move on.
I mean, look at Mel Tucker from Michigan State. He had one good season.
Yeah.
His agent negotiated a new contract. He's got a lot of like legal stuff that just dropped today, and I'm not going to say it because it's out of respect for what's going on. But his buyout for like Michigan State is like $80 million. Between $60 and $80 million. And I think these
agents are doing deals.
And I think what he's being accused of, I think could possibly
negate it.
Yeah. But that's all one great season.
Yeah.
That's what South Carolina did under Muschamp. He had one good season where we overachieved.
They extended him.
And he got a huge buyout.
Yep.
And, we did the same thing with Beamer, but Beamer wasn't making the amount of money Muschamp was. Beamer was the lowest paid head coach in the SEC.
Yeah.
So it's not like he went from making $3 million to $5 million. He made under $2 to make above $3. So it's not the end of the world.
Most receiving yards by a Gamecock through 2 games since 2000. Leggett, he's from the area that we covered
Mullins.
for our high school show in Mullins. Just playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah.
And that's good company there. Shi Smith, Juice Wells, Alshon Jeffrey,
Troy
obviously.
Williamson.
That's some of the best wide receivers ever played, at South Carolina.
Yeah.
So Leggett's definitely doing some big things.
You've got to use his size advantage against. Especially last night.
Yeah.
Even against North Carolina, they didn't have any DB that could like match up physically against them.
Right.
Throw the ball up and let him make a play.
He's got the speed too. He's
a great special teams player.
Receiver.
He returns kickoffs.
Yeah. He's doing it all.
Yeah.
I just hope that he don't get injured. But we're going to need a big game from him. We're going to need Juice Wells to finally get out there and let's play. We're going to need every weapon that we got in the arsenal against Georgia.
I agree. It's college football's in full swing mode now.
Yeah.
It's you're getting already through 2 games. It's just going to keep coming. Hopefully, it's going to be interesting the next several weeks for both teams.
South Carolina and Clemson. We'll know what both teams are here in the next few weeks.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
But thanks for joining us, guys. We'll be back next week to recap. Hopefully,
2 wins.
Some wins. I don't know.
2 wins.
Hopefully, a Gamecock win.
Optimistic.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
let's just see some progress.
As a fan, I hope we are recapping a Gamecock win and a Clemson loss.
Yes.
But for show purposes, I hope they're both wins.
Right. No. I hope it's a Clemson loss. Show purposes too. Screw them. But join us next week. We'll be here to recap. As much as we say we're not going to overreact to a Gamecock loss, we're probably going to overreact to a Gamecock loss. So
I guess that's the benefit of recording the day after the games.
Yes. So join us then. Like, share, comment. Let us know if there's anything that you guys want us to talk about.
Yep.
And we'll see you next week.